I rise in strong support of this effort to turn back this rule. The rule has been well explained by the senator from Iowa. Her efforts are about all that the Congress can currently do. Frankly, Mr. President, I would hope that we can figure out how to go further so that the Congress has to approve every rule that's issued by every agency of government that has significant economic impact. It's frankly hard to imagine a rule that has a more wide-ranging impact or more economic impact than this one does. As has been well pointed out, the authority given to the EPA under the Clean Water Act was very consistent with federal discussions and debates for 170 years. I think 1846 was the first time that the term navigable waters was used in federal law in a bill that James Knox Polk, the President Polk, actually vetoed the bill, but the term was understood and it came back quickly into federal law, and it meant exactly what it said, navigable waters of the United States. Now, why would that be a federal responsibility? Because navigable means you can move something on it. Moving something on it means commerce. And one of the principal reasons for the Constitution was to regulate interstate commerce. So this has been a long-established principle. Yes, there is some federal responsibility for those avenues of commerce in the country, areas, rivers, waterways you can navigate. But of course, that's not good enough for the EPA. 170 years of federal law, almost total and complete understanding around the country, and it appears even on the part of federal judges of what navigable means. There is a way to get expanded jurisdiction if the EPA wanted expanded jurisdiction, and that's to come to the Congress and say, give us not just responsibility over navigable waters, but all the water that can run into all the water, that can run into any water, that can run into any water, that can run into navigable waters. If the EPA got this jurisdiction, Mr. President, you wouldn't be able to come up with enough federal bureaucrats to oversee this level of jurisdiction. In a map that's not nearly as large as the map that we had there, but a map that the Missouri Farm Bureau put out in our state, this is how much of the state of Missouri would be under the jurisdiction of the EPA under this law. Now, even if you're standing really close to this map, you can't see the non-red areas. The red areas, the new federal jurisdiction. The non-red areas is 0.3% of the state. So anything that goes on in 99.7% of our state also really founded on the basis of the rivers that cut through the middle of it, that bind it on the east, would be obviously waters that are in most cases navigable and unarguably navigable, but all the water that runs into any water that could ever run into any water that runs into that water is clearly not navigable. That's why county commissioners all over our state are calling saying, if this passes, what does it mean? Can we mow the right of way without a federal permit? Because there is no question if this passes that every roadside ditch in the entire state of Missouri would be considered navigable waters. There is nowhere outside the offices of the EPA and the most extreme among us where anybody would want to argue that every ditch along every road and every highway is navigable waters. The EPA wants jurisdiction they couldn't exercise. This is a moment when the Congress can stand up and say, we do not want this rule to go into effect. We're going to pass a resolution that puts this on the president's desk. And if the president's going to be for this, no matter what the courts say, no matter what the Corps of Engineers says, no matter what the Congress says, the president has to take a position on this rule. It's his EPA. It's out of control on this rule. And Mr. President, I hope my colleagues join the senator from Iowa and me and many others in saying we don't want this rule to go into effect. And I would yield the floor and believe there is the absence of a quorum.